Welcome to the Straightway Through podcast with Gina, where we say it straight to ourselves honestly. We go for clarity in our communications, for purpose in life, all about communication. Tonight, I have a special guest, Lyndsey Frye, here. Lyndsey is the director of admissions at the Career Training School, and she is in communication with prospective students all day long. So, Lyndsey, I know you're going to have a lot to talk about in terms of remote communication, not having to see these people face to face, and we're going to get into that. But first, a prayer for us to ask for God's guidance here, because there's a lot of people that struggle with communication, and it's not just in the workplace, it's personal, and it can be very, very frustrating. And we want those people to hear something today that helps them to communicate better. So we thank you, Father God Almighty, for everything that you provide for us. We know that communication is part of your plan for us. And as I move through this podcast today, please help me to find the right questions. Ask Lyndsey things that help our listeners to know how to communicate better in their everyday professional lives and personal lives. As we move through life, whatever decade we're in, it seems that there's always new challenges in terms of communication. And what can we do to build our communication skills so that our relationships can grow and prosper and bring us joy and connection? Please lead us and guide us. And I thank you in Christ Jesus' name. Amen. All right, Lyndsey, I'm super excited to talk to you. It is going to be fun because we really have entered into a world where it's a lot less face-to-face than it used to be. And it sounds like you're doing that every single day. So your
Yes.
special topic today that you chose was how hard it is to maintain that consistency with people that you're not seeing face to face. How do you get them to follow through with things? How do you get them to get back to you? So just give us a brief overview of what your challenge is with communication.
Okay. Well, in terms of what I do on a daily basis, I am reaching out to folks over the phone. My goal is to connect with them, build a rapport with them, get to know what their goals and aspirations are, and then recommend a program that aligns with those goals. And then from there, I'm walking them through an enrollment process essentially to get them registered for classes. And the reason that it is so challenging, or I think what makes it different, is everything is done over the phone or virtually, through an application that I'm walking them through on the computer, all the way, through the financial aid process. There's an online orientation, and there's just a lot of steps, and you're having to do all of this from point A to point Z without ever seeing the person face to face.
And what do you think makes it easier about the face-to-face?
I think that you are able to read a person better when you're able to see their facial expressions.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's nervous or hesitant,
Paying attention.
when we're paying attention, if you have someone, I have worked, I will say before this, in an environment where I was face to face. And that person was sitting in my office, and they were alone, and we're having a one-on-one conversation. But now I'm speaking to people, and they're in their homes, and they've got their dogs barking and their kids, running back and forth through the living room, and significant other probably stopping in to, make a comment here or there. So there are a lot of distractions when you're having to, have a conversation with someone in their from the comfort of their own home. And it definitely makes it more challenging.
Yeah, I find it interesting. Just last night, I was at a Toastmasters meeting, and one of my fellow members gave a speech on body language and communication. And he gave a breakdown according to some scientists, some psychologist or sociologist who broke down the percentages of how much your words matter, how much your tone matters, how much your body language matters when you're communicating. And I can't remember the exact specific number breakdowns, but words was very small. I do remember that tone, believe it or not, because I'm always working on my tone, and my tone, I have a very sharp tone, and my tone can be sharp amongst other things. So I'm always working on my tone. And so tone stuck out for me. It said 38% tone. I couldn't believe it. That's huge. Now I know how important tone is, but to actually put a number assigned to it, 38%, I'm like, wow, I got to pick up the speed working on this tone. Body language was the biggest. So it was words, let's just say, I don't know, let's just say 20%, tone 38%, body language was the rest. So I think what you're sharing here is that when you only have a voice, you're missing, and you have tone, but you're missing that huge percentage of body language, whether it's facial expressions, hand movements, like we said, paying attention. Are they looking over here? Are they actually focused on what you're saying? You can't get all that from just audio.
No,
Yeah.
you can't. I oftentimes will think, is this person rolling their eyes over there? Are they
Right.
interested? So I
Exactly.
agree.
Yeah. It does give you skills though to have to tune in to audio only. I remember years ago I helped clients. We did video calls, but every now and then I couldn't do a video call and we had to do a phone call, and I would do anything to get back to the video and not do the phone because there was so much information that felt like it was missing. And I needed that information in order for the call to really go the way it would benefit the person the most. But what I learned is when I was forced to do the audio calls, it's almost like what happened in that call couldn't have happened if I had the other pieces. I had to rely on something else inside of me. Something else inside of me had to kick in and take over. And even though it's harder because it's not a natural skill, that created a different conversation between us than we would have ever had if I had the other things to rely on. So, do
Right.
you feel like you're getting any new skills from this?
Absolutely. Number one, active listening. You need to really know where your student or where your prospect is, or the person that you're speaking to, you know, is at. Where is their mind at? What are they doing right now? Are they receptive to the information that you're giving them? And you can tell a lot of that just by actively listening. What are their responses? Are they asking questions that are relevant to the information that I'm giving?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have things that I will say like, wow, and oh my God, that's great. And, I have my go to phrases that I'll use, but what are this person's phrases? What are their responses? And do they align with the stuff that I'm saying or the information that I'm giving them? You really need to listen for those cues and, pay extra special attention to what they're saying, because that tells you if you've got someone on the phone who's really paying attention, or,
Mm-hmm.
if they're just kind of, multitasking and giving you half of their attention.
Yeah, that's a great point. The multitasking. One of the things that I've gotten away from in my life when I was younger, I used to be okay with having conversations. For example, like if I was driving the car somewhere, it's like, well, I have some time. Why don't I call my friend and chat with her? And of course, friends did that with me as well. I've gotten away from that sort of thing because I don't feel like that's really me giving them my time, my presence. It's like, yeah, I'm driving and it makes my drive go better and it's nicer, it's more fun for the drive. But am I really paying attention to what they're saying? Fully, meaning as if I were sitting in one spot. So you can't that multitask conversation is always going to be at a different level. It's always going to be a little less present, a little less intimate, a little less available than if your undivided attention is there. And so now if people say things to me like, oh, I'll call you from the car, I'm like, no, don't call me from the car. Call, if you don't want to call me at all, don't call me at all. It's fine. Meaning like, I'm not going to demand that you schedule time to talk to me where you're just sitting in a room by yourself. But I don't want to have those conversations when you're in the car, because I'd rather have all of you. I'd rather have your full presence than just part of you. So I think
It's
that was
funny you
really
say
interesting.
that. Oh, I'm sorry. It's
No, go
funny
ahead.
you say that because I sometimes I'll get someone will pick up the phone and I'll get the response, "Oh, I'm just in the car
Driving.
driving. We can talk now."
Right.
Or, "I'm just cooking dinner. We can have a conversation now." And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I don't really want to have this. This is your life, your future, your education, and it's a serious conversation. So I don't know that we should have it while you're on the highway, following the GPS, or while you're trying to make dinner for your family. I'd much rather have it when, you can give me your full attention. So, of
Exactly.
course, I can't really say that when it's the first time I'm having a conversation with someone and they've just picked up the phone, but I'm definitely thinking it in the back of my mind.
Yeah, exactly. And I have a friend who used to say, "Oh, I'm going on a long drive. I'll call you." And I used to say, "Oh," and he would call and I would be on speaker. When you're talking to people and they're in the car and it's on speaker, you can't even hear them really well. It's not the same as having a voice up close in your ear. It sounds distant and there's all that fuzz. There's all that fuzz
Exactly.
that comes through. And it just doesn't feel good. If I tune into my body when I'm having that kind of a conversation, I don't feel connected to that person at all. And that's why I've started saying like, no, don't call me from the car. It's okay if you don't want to talk or you don't want to, but I have to have a conversation with you when you have the time to just be having the conversation with me. So this brings up a really good point, because I know there's still a lot of people that do those kinds of multitasking calls and conversations in their life. And it's fine if they like it, and it's fine if their friends like it, and it's fine if it works. But what would be different for them if they sat still, did nothing else? Like, right? Even if you're sitting on your couch having a conversation with somebody, it's hard to do this if you're on a video call. That's why I like video calls. But if you're just on the phone with somebody and you're on your couch, you pick up a pen, you start writing, or you're doing something else because you don't have that person in front of you to look at. And I think the doodling is okay as long as you're not doing your next art project. You still feel connected. You still feel connected, and it gives you something to do with your hands and something to look at because you don't have the person to look at. But anything else, same thing when I'm in the store shopping. How many times do you go to the store? I'm in the grocery store and someone's on the phone walking around talking their whole conversation the whole time while they're in the grocery store. And it's not, no judgment here on that. I mean, I've done things like that in my life too, but I can't help but wonder, how much of yourself are you giving to that person, and how much of yourself are you giving to your grocery list? Like, are you getting all the items you need? Are you focused on
Definitely
which avocado is the better one?
I cannot do multitasking in the grocery store. I'd walk out with nothing that I needed. That's not an option for me. So I don't
Yeah.
know how folks can do that. I really don't. I have
Yeah.
to, I have a list in my mind of the items I need to get, and that list is going right out the window if I'm having a conversation with someone.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's an ongoing thing that you don't realize. People don't realize until they stop it. Meaning so many people are in that habit of multitasking and having those conversations while they're multitasking that they don't even know what they're missing in their relationships. Because what is it like when somebody sits down and gives you full presence, like you have to do on a podcast? We have to do this here. We're on a video. If you
right,
start doing something else, I'm going to know you're doing it, and I'm going to feel that disconnect.
right.
Right. So it's like, how many people don't know what they're missing?
Well, this day and age, Gina, things have shifted so much with technology and all the distractions we have. I don't think people realize
Mm-hmm.
how difficult or what, one on one, not everybody, I can't speak for everyone, but it's, I think, a lot harder to find real, genuine, effective communication because of all the distractions And because of, the way that we communicate these days through text message, we can avoid that phone call now. We can shoot an email, we can send a picture. You don't have to answer your phone anymore. People kind of avoid the face to face or even the phone conversations nowadays, because you can just shoot me a text message if you've really got something important to say, and I'm going to read that message, and I don't have to have an actual conversation with you.
I do think there's a way to have present text message conversations. But what that looks like is, when it's that steady flow, meaning you send a text and they send a text and then you send a text and then they send a text. It's not like there's 3-minute lag time in between each text where they're multitasking, but where you're really going back and forth. The reason not that I think text messaging should replace face-to-face, but the reason that I really like text messaging is because it gives the person on the other end some calm time to respond, meaning you don't have to react. You don't have to have like, oh no, they just said this. Sometimes people in communication when they're in person have a very hard time maintaining calm. And if that's the kind of relationship you have with someone, meaning the person in your life that you have a hard time maintaining calm with when they say something or you say something, I think text messaging is a really good option until you get to a place where you can both maintain calm in person. So I like text messaging for that reason. If it's that kind of present back and forth, it gives each party a little bit of time to respond, to craft their words, to deal with their emotions instead of the gut level reactive response. I mean, there's a lot of times in my life where I wish I had been texting instead of speaking, because it would have saved me from speaking a lot of things that I spoke that I wish I hadn't said. Right? It's like, if I had only had the phone in between us and the text messaging in between us, that would have been helpful. What do you think about?
I agree with that.
About that. And I don't, you can disagree. I mean, I love disagreement, so don't feel like you have to agree,
No, you bring up a really good point. Another layer of what I do at my job is that I manage people. And of course, that involves a lot, because we are remote. It involves a lot of communication through text, or we use like Slack or Skype to kind of, chat rooms to discuss a lot of things. And, sometimes things come across much better when you have the ability to stop and think and craft your words, like you say, where if I'm giving direct criticism to maybe a call or feedback from a conversation that I'm listening to, it gives me an opportunity to really think about what you want to say.
Exactly.
And I've also had, conversations with my supervisor or the president of my company. And, we work under a lot of pressure sometimes. And sometimes he'll send a message and I'll read it, and, it will make me feel frustrated. But I'll go back and I'll read that message 2 hours later and I'll say, that's not so bad. He didn't really say anything that was that offensive. So sometimes having that pause makes all the difference in the world. Because I think I am can be very guilty of being reactive and kind of leading with my emotions sometimes. But if you have a moment to just stop and pause and read that message and then really take the emotion out of it, it is definitely different the way that I respond through a chat room message versus what I might have said if we were having a face-to-face conversation.
Exactly. Because think about it, if you're having a face-to-face conversation, you don't have the luxury of pausing. If somebody said something to you and you just went silent, there'd be something wrong there, right? They would think something was very wrong. You can't go silent in a conversation. But in those text messaging conversations, you can go silent, and it's a cushion. It's a cushion. And like you said, so many times you go back and read it a second time and you're like, well, it wasn't that bad. What was I picking up then? that doesn't seem to be in those words now. It's really powerful how that works. And the other great thing about text messaging is it's documented.
That's
meaning
true too.
nobody can say, well, I didn't say that. Oh, I didn't say that. You could say, well, look, it's right here. This is what you wrote. So I think it gives it's not, it should not take the place of face-to-face communication, but I think it's a really beautiful option for people that struggle in a certain relationship, or like you said, when they too emotional and they need some time to cool down. It can be a really great tool and be part of relationships, not the whole thing, but part of.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Sometimes you just can't get the words out,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes some time to pause and really think about what you want to say and put something together. And so it can be a very effective
Mm-hmm.
form of communication for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
My, I think, issue with it sometimes, though, is that it's not always reciprocated. Sometimes you can write a long paragraph, pour your emotions out or explain yourself, and you're for me, I'll feel really good when I'm able to craft something that really is able to explain my feelings and just get the message out that I'm wanting to give out. And it's frustrating to do all of that and to put all that effort into it and then to not get something back in return, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
just like a one word response.
Mm.
That's when it becomes frustrating.
Yeah. Right. That's a whole
And
nother
you can't
podcast.
control that.
It's a whole nother episode. Yeah, that's right. You can't control it. It reminds me of the last episode though too, where we were talking about what happens when you send a message to somebody and you get the read, READ. It shows that they've read it, but they don't respond. It is hard when you put yourself out there, or you put something out there and you don't get the response that feels like it was fully acknowledged. We'll say that.
Yes.
I'm wondering, before you mentioned that you can wonder, are they rolling their eyes? Are they doing things like that? Do you ever, not that you would say that, but do you ever ask them questions like, do I have your full attention?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is something that I would coach my team on,
Mm-hmm.
because if I'm working, let's say, someone just gets hired to work with me and I'm teaching them how to have these conversations with prospective students,
Mm-hmm.
you'll get someone who's maybe not newer to this or newer to having these kinds of conversations over the phone. And I can listen to one of their calls and I'll hear them just kind of talking, going through the conversation, giving the information, and you can hear the prospect in the background, frying pans and kids running through and them pausing to put the phone down to speak to someone who's in the next room. And I will coach them and say, no, you have to pause there and kind of address that. Or otherwise, you're going to be an hour into a conversation and the person you're speaking to is going to start to say, well, what about this? And what did you say about that again? And I don't really remember you even explaining that to me. If you don't have their full attention, then it's just wasting time, essentially.
Exactly.
So yeah, there's a way to say things and to address that, I think, without, being offensive or without really, sounding rude, but it almost demands their attention. Like, what I would do is say, hey, it sounds like you've got a lot going on over there. Is this really the best time for us to have this conversation? Because I want to make sure that you don't miss anything. So there's a way to tackle it.
That is a
Obviously,
nice
without
way. My way is a little more straight. We'll call it straight. This is straightway through, right? But it's a little more straight, but that is a very, very nice way to say it. It conveys the message that you are asking them for their full attention. Right? I would say, hey, do I have your full attention here? Because I'm feeling a disconnect. That's something I would say. And I think about that a lot, even with customer service representatives. I talk to them a lot, it seems, because it doesn't matter whether it's business stuff, software, whatever it is. I feel like I'm always on the phone with a customer service representative. And a lot of times you can hear them typing. I don't know if they're typing about the words I'm saying. I don't know if they're on a little chat box with someone else, right? They're on the call with me. Meanwhile, they're on a chat box helping someone else. So sometimes I just say that, do I have your full attention? Or you know what I even say? Can you let me know what you have heard me state my problem to be, just so I know you're
right.
hearing me? And a lot of times when they repeat it back, it's not at all my problem. It's not at all what I stated. And then again, I tend to be very straight. I'm not saying that it's the best way, but it's my way certainly. And sometimes I'll say to them, what could we do? Like, what could we do to make this a priority? What could we do?
Right.
What could I do to get your full attention here? What could I do to get you to hear me? And see what they say. Right. And I find that when I do things like that, it does change. It kind of, it's a nice demand, but it demands their attention when you're straight on like that, because most people aren't straight. Most people just keep talking through the frying pans and the kids, right? They just keep talking through it. They don't stop and address it. And there's a value to stopping and addressing it.
Well, it has to be addressed, whether it's your more direct way or my way where I'm kind of dancing around it. One way or another, it's, you know, it's important for, in my situation, for the person to hear the information and to, you know, be able to understand the benefits of what I'm discussing, or otherwise the entire conversation is pointless. Or you just find yourself having to spend even more time on the phone to go over things that you've already said, which it doesn't help anyone. And most people don't want to be on the phone any longer than they need to be.
Right.
So I'd rather address it up front and get that out of the way than, you know, go through all of that and then have to start repeating it again.
It takes courage. It really does. It takes courage to be able to communicate clearly and directly. And I think sometimes that's what's lacking in people. It's not that they, you know, the people that talk through the frying pans and the kids and all that, they just keep talking. I think in them, it's almost like they're not yet at the place where they're courageously addressing it. It takes courage to say, hey, are you listening to me? And when you get to that point, it's hard to scare it away. Once you get the courage to do that, you do that a lot. What it reminds me of is a lot of times this is what I see in parents with kids. So let's say you have a small kid and you're a parent. I see parents saying things to the kids, but not with full presence and not with the kid's eyes on them. So for example, the kid will be over in another, it could be the same room, but they're playing with a toy. And the mom will walk by and say, dinner in 10 minutes, let's say. Okay. And the kid is playing with the toy. And then the mom says, dinner in 10 minutes. She's at the table in 10 minutes. And then she's saying, how come you're not here? Yeah, how come you didn't listen to me? I told you. It's like, yeah, but did you look into that child's eyes and say, Sammy, we got dinner in 10 minutes. I want to see you at that table. Okay. Right. I mean, like, that's a different level of communication. And I think that's the level of communication that we're all, I mean, I shouldn't say we're all going for. If you get to higher and higher level communications, that's the kind of communication that you want. Because if you just say something in passing to a child like that, it's the same thing as talking to that person who's, you hear frying pans and conversations and all that other stuff in the background. There's not full presence there. And then you can't really blame the kid for not being at the dinner table in 10 minutes. You got to say, how could I have reached them by really addressing them? You know, holding their hands from playing with the toy, just grabbing their hands, looking into their eyes and saying, we have dinner in 10 minutes. I want to see you there.
You need that acknowledgement.
Exactly.
Or I know, at least with my children, you know, I could say something and there's no telling whether or not they heard me. You know, if the TV's on or something else is going, we're just like the distractions we're talking about. We don't know what's really got their attention if you don't have that face to face and, you know, take the moment to look them in the eye and, you know, really just make sure that you're connected with them.
How do you think you got into this place in life where you're at a job where communication is the priority? Like, what do you think led you here? I mean, were you a good communicator when you were young? Did you pursue communication when you were older? Like, how did you wind up here in this role where communication is so critical?
I don't think I was like this at all. I don't think I liked talking at all. I was extremely shy as a kid and I didn't want to talk to anyone unless I absolutely had to. And I didn't like to speak up for myself or really just share my thoughts or, you know, feelings with anyone. I think it was something that I grew into as I, you know, started to understand myself more and become more comfortable with who I was as a person. And I've worked in other roles where I've had to communicate before, but I think what really attracted me to this field is that I'm not just talking to people trying to sell them something, but I'm actually helping them take a step into a better position in their life, or into, something that's going to improve their current circumstances. So for me, there's a why behind it, a big why. I like to do what I do and why I enjoy it. And the more results I saw, I think that motivated me even more to become better at what I do and to connect with people on a deeper level. So
was there a turning point though? How do you go from being the shy child who doesn't really want to speak up at all to being in a job where you're communicating every day and coaching people on how to communicate? Right? Like was it just like so small and sequential that you can't even name it as a switch? But like, what happened? How does that happen? Like if there's a shy person out there right now, how did they get to be in a role where they're communicating on a daily basis and teaching other people how to?
Honestly, I don't know if there was any one particular thing. I do attribute a lot of what I've learned over the years to my military experience, because you're put in positions where you see things that you wouldn't normally see, or you interact with people from all different walks of life, and it exposes you to things that I might not have been exposed to otherwise. So I think that it definitely helped me to grow and, just be more well-rounded overall. But I also really think it has a lot to do with confidence, me coming into my own and just being comfortable in my own skin. I don't know that
How did you get there? How did you get there? Because there's a lot of people that, it's like, well, what's the recipe? How do you go from being uncomfortable in your own skin to comfortable? How do you go from not having the confidence to speak up to having the confidence to speak up?
I think for everybody that would be different. But I think for me particularly, becoming a mom changes your perspective on life, and you stop caring so much, I think, about some of the things that maybe I did care about when I was younger. And I don't know, being a mom just changed my perspective. I had to be confident with who I am, because I want to pass that down to my children. I want them to have confidence. I want them to be proud of their accomplishments. I want them to be able to speak up for themselves if something doesn't seem right. And the best way to teach anyone how to do something is to illustrate it yourself. So
definitely.
I don't know. I don't know that there was any particular turning point. It just kind of, it's what I blossomed into. And
that's amazing. That's great.
Yeah, it definitely didn't happen overnight, and it took a lot of time to get here. But I wouldn't go back. I like not caring as much what people think, and having that level of confidence in yourself to be able to say what's on your mind.
To say it straight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There's such a beauty to that. You would never go back to not doing it. But for some, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but it's interesting. I mean, I'm always looking for the recipes because I think that's helpful for other people. And when I hear things like, well, for me, it was when I became a mother and that changed me and I wanted to be confident for my kids. But we have to also recognize that there are mothers out there who have kids and they don't become confident. So that's what I'm saying. When you have found a way to achieve something that you didn't have prior, for me, it's just a natural inquiry. Like, well, how did that happen? And I get what you're saying. You don't know. You haven't traced it or pinpointed, or you can't say it's this thing that caused that. But I do think it's awesome that it shows people change.
Yeah.
Somehow people change. Not always for the better, sometimes for the worse.
No, but it's definitely, something that doesn't happen overnight. Well, at least in this situation, people can change and you can improve, but it's all about, are you willing to step out of your comfort zone too?
Mm-hmm.
Because without doing that, there's not any growth. So I think
Exactly.
I pushed myself. There was some level at some point where I said, hey, look, I've got to get used to
Mm-hmm.
doing this from now on and speaking up. And, that takes time and it takes courage, I
Yeah.
think.
Right. Well, good for you. It's great. It's great that you crossed that barrier.
Yeah.
Now, how does your this is the winding up, wrapping up. How does this communication in your job and getting better and better and more effective and working on it and having to do that, how does it affect your personal life? I mean, do you feel like you switch it off with your personal life, or do you feel like it bleeds over? I mean, how is your communication at work and what you're learning there better your personal life? Meaning all the non-work things you do.
That's a really good question. Because I work remote, and without the benefit of that face-to-face interaction, I feel like I'm always having to be especially clear, consistent, transparent in my outreach. Um, in many ways, it requires sort of like an extra level, so that nothing gets lost in the shuffle. And when I'm off the clock, I tend to go completely quiet. I don't want to
Oh,
communicate anymore
interesting.
because yeah, there's so much communication. There's so much involved in my daily day-to-day that sometimes I feel like I don't want to do any of it anymore at the end of it. I just want to turn my phone off and stop communicating. But it definitely I'm always thinking about that. Conversations I have with people, was that effective? Did I get my point across? Were they
Mm,
engaged? Were they really listening to me? It's something I'm always thinking about because I have to be so aware of it
mm-hmm,
in my, in what I'm doing every single day.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I like that. So you give yourself a break. You give yourself a break. You stop talking, but you're still
Yeah,
thinking. You're still reflecting.
exactly. If you're talking for 8 or 9 hours a day, I just feel at the end of the day, like this is my quiet time. This is my
Mm-hmm,
time to kind of regroup and,
mm-hmm.
let my brain have a bit of a rest.
Hmm. Yeah, that's nice. The activity and the rest. I like that.
There
Yeah. So where do you?
has to be a balance. I'm
That's
sorry.
right. That's okay. Where do you plan to continue on with this role? I mean, where do you see yourself in 10 years, let's say?
Well, I love what I do. I love helping people, take that first step and further their education. I love coaching the people that I work with and helping them to grow and to become better in their roles. Um, and so in probably the next 10 years, I see myself continuing with this.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't get me wrong, Gina, there's also that other part of me that craves maybe a different position where I don't have to talk to people all day
Mm,
because it is a lot of work and
it
it can
is.
be very draining.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot to give yourself to people
It
day in and day
does.
out and talk. And, we're getting into heavy stuff when I'm having these conversations about, hardships and the circumstances that are driving them to want to make a change in their life. And, you take a lot of that home with you at night,
Mm,
whether you
mm-hmm.
want to or not. If
Mm-hmm.
you really care about the conversations you're having, then some of that stays with you. So,
Mm,
I don't know. I'm open to see what the future holds. I love
mm.
what I do. I don't know if I could let go of it that easy, but there is also that part of me that thinks, man, if I could just work somewhere where I didn't have to talk to people, I might like that a whole lot more.
Yeah, the grass is always greener,
Right.
right?
I probably miss it, you know?
Yeah. As long as you have little breaks, as long as you have little, it'd be nice to go on a week break where you didn't have to talk at all. I mean, sometimes I think of that even if you're not in a talking profession, you learn a lot when you go silent
I agree.
because all the things that you would normally use your mouth for and your voice for, you don't have that anymore. And it brings on a whole nother level of understanding, of communication, of who you are relative to other people, who they are relative to you in terms of your communication. So I like that. And thank you, by the way, for coming on and talking on this podcast, considering it's not work hours and you're talking anyway. So thank you for that. I
My
love
pleasure.
the things that you shared and how much more intently we have to listen and focus when we don't have the physical eyes to do a lot of that processing for us.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
definitely a different layer or
Mm-hmm.
many different layers to it when you don't have that face to face.
Mm-hmm. Any final things you want to share on communication or on saying it straight?
I just want to thank you for having me. Thank you for listening to my 2 cents and including me. I'd love being a part of all this. And I know it's after hours, and I told you I don't like to do the talking, but I did thoroughly enjoy this with you.
Very good, very good. Maybe in 6 months you'll come back and we'll talk about communication part 2.
I'd love
Who knows what'll happen between now and then,
to.
right?
So much.
That's right.
6 months, since 6 months seems like nothing, but a lot can happen in six
A
months. So
lot
I'd
can
be happy
happen.
to come back.
Yeah, well, thank you. I hope that our listeners got great joy from this and some meaning that they can apply to their life and their relationships. If our listeners have enjoyed, please share, please write a review, please do what you can do to get the podcast out. And if you'd like to join a community where we are always saying it straight to ourselves first and then others, I'll post a link in the description below. Thank you so much, Lyndsy. I hope you have a wonderful evening and keep going with that confidence and communication, saying it straight
Thank you,
in
Gina.
your
Thank you
way,
so
in your
much.
way. That's right.
Yes.